Suzanne Tyson founded Higher Ed Points Inc. in 2013. Through higheredpoints.com, students can convert loyalty currency into funds for higher education, the first program of its kind. Prior to this, she was a president and co-owner of studentawards.com. Suzanne has also worked as a higher education sales and marketing consultant and as a director of marketing for Thomson Nielsen in the higher education division, and as an associate director of business development for the Air Miles Reward program. In addition to her passion for helping students find innovative sources of funding for their higher education, Suzanne performs with a community theater group, raising funds to support the charity work in Africa and Canada. Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you for having me, Pauline.
Super excited to chat with you today on the topic of journey to entrepreneurship from the female perspective. So I'm going to dive right in. I'll start with our first question. What was your path to entrepreneurship?
So my path is relatively unusual. I am what I call a silverpreneur. So I launched Higher Ed Points when I was in my mid 40s, after working in corporate Canada for about 25 years. And Higher Ed Points allows students to convert anyone's loyalty points into funds for tuition or student loans. And I had worked in college publishing, and I had worked in the loyalty industry, and I also worked in the scholarship matching and student funding area. So I took all of that experience and came up with the concept for Higher Ed Points. And because I had experience in each of the different areas, I was able to navigate my way to launch the company. And that's why it had never been done before, taking existing loyalty points and converting them into tuition. So that's how I came up with Higher Ed Points. But in each of my roles, people in the corporate environment always said that I was more intrapreneurial in the approach to tackling things. So it took a long time to get to Higher Ed Points, but the journey along the way was always fun, working on things within corporations that were new and innovative.
That's awesome. I love the term silverpreneur. It makes me think that I have tons of opportunities to come up with a business plan throughout my life because I've always had a passion for entrepreneurship. So, maybe it'll be in the next 10 years.
Yeah, there's no right time. It's just when you have the right idea and all of the stars align.
So what are the challenges you've experienced on that path? And can any of the challenges you've faced be attributed to being female?
So anytime somebody takes an idea from conception to reality, there are lots and lots of challenges. And pardon me, there's a great visual of this journey. The high point is when you say, okay, I'm going to do this. And from there's a big steep, oh my gosh, what the heck did I get myself into? And then it's consistently up and down. So there are always challenges at every single stage. And anybody who sees an entrepreneur and they think they've made it because they appeared in the Globe and Mail or they got an article in some amazing Forbes or whatever else, it's still a struggle day to day. So I would say for me in particular, the challenge was taking an idea that had never been done. So I had to build the technology, I had to build the relationships. I have so we have our loyalty partners include Aeroplan and TD Rewards, and American Express has come on board, CIBC Aventura and Scotia Rewards. And so building those relationships was one end of it. And then we have, because they can convert their loyalty points into tuition payments, we also had to establish relationships with the universities. And that I thought would be quick and easy and a no-brainer because, you're paying for tuition, we're helping students fund their education, but there are lots of barriers there. And so the unexpected things were it took a really long time to get the universities and colleges on board and get the critical mass of those schools. And then in terms of being a female, I think based on my experience in being in a Mars cohort, a SheEO cohort, and the community, and having all sorts of conversations with female entrepreneurs, we tend to bootstrap all of the risk out of the business. We tend to not go for venture capital funding right out of the gate. And so a lot of times we're cobbling together funds to get to the next gate. And I think that's a very different approach than a lot of the male entrepreneurs that I've come across in my journey. And so the one major thing I think is the approach to starting the business and funding the business that's different as a female entrepreneur.
Thanks, Suzanne. And let's dive into that topic a little bit more on the topic of funding. You stated that you received your funding through SheEO. How does that model differ from the traditional venture capitalist funding models out there?
So in terms of funding higher ed points, I made a conscious decision when I launched in 2013 not to seek external equity. So most of the funding we've had comes from my husband and myself. We've been self-funding the business. When I became a SheEO venture in 2017, it was amazing because there was an opportunity to participate in the pool of funding they had available. In 2017, when I became a SheEO venture, the thing that was amazing about the access to funding from SheEO was it didn't require a big pitch and reams and reams of data. When Higher Ed Points was chosen as a SheEO venture, the 7 ventures in my cohort went off for a retreat. We spent 2 days getting to know each other and our businesses and everything about our personal backgrounds and the business background. And on the last day of the retreat, we sat down, the 7 of us, and we divided up a pool of $700,000. And the SheEO rule, there were only 2 rules. One venture couldn't get it all, and you couldn't split it evenly. So there had to be some sort of negotiation. So what my cohort did, which I'm not sure if it's the same as other cohorts, is we put together a list of what each of us needed. We looked at the total pool of $700,000 available to us, and then we actually grew the pot because some of the ventures just needed short-term cash flow to get VC or equity investment, and then they could put the cash back into it. So we actually expanded our $700,000 pool to, I think, $760,000, and everybody got what they needed. So it certainly was different than the winner take all, here, let's throw $23 million at one venture thing. It was really based on need.
Thanks, Suzanne, for that. So if you didn't want venture capitalist funding and you were funded partly through SheEO, what other sources of funding have you pursued or received? And any thoughts on these sources of funding?
Well, if you speak with any of my counterparts in the SheEO venture cohort, all of us, there's a term I use. I put on my pitching boots, and so I have pitched for more purses, for more contests, for more sources of funding than ever before. So let's see. I went into a Mars cohort, and at the end of the Mars cohort, there was pitching for funding there, which I didn't end up securing any funding from that. We were in the top 5 finalists for the TELUS pitch, so there was funding that came from that. We made it to the semi-finalist in the MIT Innovation Inclusiveness pitch. I actually pitched on Dragon's Den. The episode didn't get aired. That was a very interesting experience.
I can imagine.
And this year there was the Top Mom Show pitch. So I think a lot of women are out there pitching in these contests first to get awareness. So the thing about SheEO, the funding was great for us, but access to the network is really what's helped Higher Ed Points. That's one thing. And then the other funding that I got from TELUS, which was amazing, helped me go to the Ontario Universities Fair and have a booth there. It helped pay for that. Mm-hmm. But what I came to the conclusion of, I'm going to set aside my pitching boots for a while because it's a tremendous amount of effort. Some of them aren't that difficult, but it's a tremendous amount of effort. And it's really gut destroying, soul destroying when you don't make the finalist pool. Mm-hmm. And so it takes attention away from the business. And the analogy I had was it's a modern day beauty contest. So women now are participating in just a different kind of a beauty contest. Mm. Who's the youngest, who's the smartest, who can speak the best on their feet, who's got the best brand image that's going to help their brand look good. And I think there has to be a different way. So the one source of funding that has been absolutely landscape changing for Higher Ed Points is the federal government's Women's Entrepreneurship Fund. And that was more of a business proposal application. And I have to say, if the venture capital funds or any bank that has entrepreneurship funds or wants to support women, simply take the government's application format and put it out there, and it's $100,000 increments. So the thing that's so wonderful about it is a $100,000 grant. So it didn't have to worry about paying it back. We had to match 13% of the funding. So anytime I spend $1, I'm spending 13 of my own cents on that. But in the application process, I've got very specific about what you had to spend the money on, what you wanted to spend the money on. And that discipline in the application process has allowed me for the past year with the Women's Entrepreneurship Fund to say, okay, when I spend $1 on social media marketing, because that was in the thing, this is the return that I get. And I can compare across all of the different spend where that spend is the most efficient. So now, after a year of that experience, I could go to a venture capital firm and say, look, $5 million isn't going to help more students pay for education, but here's what would help, right? Putting us in your brand marketing. So TD is going to help us with some marketing now, and having them just tell their customers that Aeroplan and TD rewards are in higher ed points will actually do more to help people pay for school than me getting a $5 million investment. So that Women's Entrepreneurship Fund, I strongly suggest any corporation or VC take a look at that model, and giving an entrepreneur my size and any of the CEO ventures $100,000 will actually turn more return on future profitability than I think a big $2 million investment would.
Right. Wow. That's incredibly interesting. Just going back, I appreciate your candor there into the pitching landscape. I'll just keep it at that. That was really interesting for me. And back to the Women's Entrepreneurship Fund, we can put a link at the bottom of this video on our YouTube. So for folks out there that are interested, especially women entrepreneurs, they can go ahead and check that out. For women out there that are interested in starting their own business and becoming a founder like yourself, me, one day, hopefully, what advice would you provide them as they start their journey into entrepreneurship?
So I would say for any woman that has a great idea, take the time up front to look at the landscape, see what else is being offered out there. Don't be dissuaded if your idea exists and you've got a twist on it. But I would say join some of the networking groups. There are tons of incubators. So go and participate in incubators, find like-minded people. Join SheEO, for example. I would say that's probably within the SheEO community, somebody has experience in the area that you want to take, and then test your idea with your market, your potential market. But at some point, you're going to have to say, okay, I'm going to do this. And for me, it was March break of 2013 March break. I said, I'm going to pay to have a website wireframe made. And I think my initial investment was $2,500, had a brilliant mind help me create the wireframe, and having that visual representation of what higher ed points could be was what got Aeroplan to say, yes, let's do this. So at some point, you've got to put a little bit of money behind your idea and take it until you find the gates. But the biggest thing I would say is, if you don't have direct experience in the industry you want to launch something in, find somebody who does and have that person on your advisory board. Because like I had worked in higher education, I didn't anticipate how long it would take to get universities and colleges on board. But because I'd worked in the industry, I knew how to navigate it. So find somebody with experience in that industry to help you navigate the unexpected bumps. But just go for it. You've got nothing to lose.
Yeah, that's the number one advice that I'm hearing from entrepreneurs out there. Just dive in, just do it, start doing something and see where it takes you. So thank you again, Suzanne, for your time. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to share this clip with everyone and all our followers on Women in Leadership's LinkedIn page. Thanks again.
Thanks, Feline.